Hey guys, welcome to our channel, Chill on YouTube. Forget everything you know about the United States of America. It is not united anymore, but divided into several independent nations. In school, most of us are taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. But in reality, there is evidence that the Vikings and the Polynesians were there hundreds of years before. And most importantly, we can't really say he discovered anything when there were already millions of people living there. But Columbus arriving in America did spark massive amounts of exploration and colonization that led to the world as we know it. If Columbus had not discovered America, it's safe to assume someone would have found it sooner or later. However, the modern world would be drastically different if the contact proved to be a little different. Let's say if instead Columbus, a number of other explorers from nations with less religious fervor came and were open to better working with native empires, it was possible for the native civilizations to have survived much longer. For instance, the colonization of India took centuries and India came out of the colonization intact. The natives would have learned and might have begun their own voyages. So without any further ado, let's rediscover and dive in. Historical facts. First off, before Columbus arrived, the Americas were not just sparsely populated wildlands with tribes wandering through them. Instead, there were actually more people in the Americas living in complex and highly organized societies than there were in Europe. All of the communities had rich and mature cultures and established languages. There is even some evidence that the indigenous populations of North and South America occupied the region for around 20,000 years before Columbus arrived. Since time immemorial, they had diversified so greatly in terms of culture that they spoke approximately 300 different languages. But that all changed when Columbus and the European colonizers arrived. A study from England's University College London found that the European colonization of the Americas indirectly contributed to the deaths of about 56 million people by the year 1600. The study attributes the deaths to factors including introduced diseases such as smallpox and measles, as well as welfare and societal collapse. Impact on the development of Europe. If the Americas had never been colonized by the Europeans, not only would many lives have been saved, but also various cultures and languages. Through colonization, the indigenous populations were labeled as Indians. They were enslaved and they were forced to abandon their own cultures and convert to Christianity. The world would be drastically different. Europe and Asia would still, presumably, have better technology. The superpowers would also potentially have done more in terms of colonizing and developing Africa, given the lack of unclaimed land to go to. Eventually, the new continents would be discovered and cultures would clash. Treatment regarding Native Americans would depend on the time of discovery, though they would still get hit very hard by the diseases that hit them hard in actual history. Whether or not the survivors would continuously get kicked off their land is entirely dependent on who was in charge at the time. But I'd wager that unless an unpredictable and unlikely renaissance occurred, not much would be different for them. Indigenous Nations. If it weren't for this oppression, the Indigenous Nations would have continued to develop and progress. Modern-day California would be the most densely populated region, but the entire continent would be divided into different nations, much like Europe and Asia. Smaller tribes would get swallowed up by larger ones, and borders would continue to change throughout history. But one group that may have emerged as a dominant culture over the others would be the Iroquois. They were known as one of the strongest nations due to their successful agricultural practices and their ability to invade other nations. If Columbus hadn't brought colonization over to the Americas, then the Iroquois would probably have continued to grow their nation and surround much of the Great Lakes area and the Mississippi River. So, this is the end of the video. What if Columbus never discovered America? We hope you really enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. But before you go, subscribe, like, and share the video, and don't forget, hit the bell icon to check out our interesting videos made just for you.